Hello and welcome to Financial Advice in a Digital World, a series of interviews and a debate next year looking at all sorts of issues around the issue of automated advice. We're talking to Alan Miller, the founder of SCM Direct, about his views on the market and how it may or may not develop. So, Alan, at SCM Direct did some research earlier this year, looking at robo-advice, romo-advice, automated advice, various names for it. And you perhaps were a little bit sceptical about what was out there in the market. Could you just take us through what you found?
I mean, there are a number of issues. There were issues regarding whether they were giving advice. So that many were claiming to give advice. Some didn't actually have a permission, regulatory permission to give advice, but the investors or the potential clients were essentially being misled that they were giving advice when they weren't allowed to give advice. So that's number one. A lot of the illustrations on performance were highly misleading. I mean, one site I've seen recently has actually completely removed the performance where it was showing an overseas portfolio which the UK investors couldn't even invest in. And then the fundamental financial issue where, because by definition these companies are very small and subscale, and because their costs are pretty high, and they don't look to be structured incredibly efficiently, so they tend to have a large number of people, quite highly paid people. What we found actually, even using really conservative assumptions, it would take at least 11 years just to break even. And we were told recently by somebody who came from one of the companies we looked at that actually the acquisition cost was actually materially higher than the numbers within our report. So we said 11 years, maybe it's 15 or 20 years, and we don't think the average investor is going to stay 15 or 20 years. So
you don't think there's a way that the technology might help the cost management or the acquisition? There might be ways to come up with the best marketing campaign? I'm sure there's, I'm not saying there isn't a way, but if you think about the fundamentals to the offerings at the moment, firstly, the investment teams don't have a strong track record, so people are essentially buying blind. Secondly, the costs are actually on the end-to-end are similar to, buying a low-cost passive multi-asset fund anyway. And thirdly, you're not really getting advice. So given the fact these companies, the only way they can kind of grow, and they're all targeting these kind of millennials, which is the buzzword, and they seem to have forgotten the fact that by definition, that group tends to have less money to invest. And because their investment experience tends to be less than older, the amount of cost in terms of kind of keeping in touch with them, the amount of emails that are naturally going to go to and forth. If you think about it, if somebody invests £15,000 and you charge, say, 0.4%, which might be the typical fee after paying for third-party administration and custody costs, that's what they're probably earning, that's £60. So so the actual cost, given that these are not funds, these are segregated portfolios, they're all running segregated portfolios, which is different to one group fund, the costs simply do not work. It's only large companies using their brand and their existing client base can get around this problem. The small ones, unless they do something different, offer something different, target a different group, not these millennials. Nothing wrong with millennials, it's simply, by definition, they don't have a lot of money to invest. So is there an answer to reach more investors or potential investors? Do you think that there is something? Is it guidance? Is it a big, should someone be advertising on television? How do you reach people, or do you
well, you talk about advertising and TV, and digital. The cost of digital, all the research shows, have been going up and up. And if you think about the conversion rate of people buying, whether buying off radio, TV, media, it's going down, isn't it? So you've got this basic problem that the cost is going up, the conversion rate must be going down, no matter how many very clever kind of SEOs they have in their organization. These are the basics.
and they're competing with huge brand names and they're also competing with the fact that in the UK, most investing is done by advisors. So actually the amount which is kind of direct is in the minority, not the majority. And then on top of that, they're competing with the big fund supermarkets. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but statistically, most of them, I think, will go bust.
Okay, so it's like opening a restaurant almost. A lot of those go.
Well, I think a more chance opening a restaurant.
Okay. And are investors are they aware of this? Is it on their radar at all?
No, I don't think they are. I don't think they are. But I mean, obviously, investors are safeguarded because of the normal FCA custody and custody rules. It may be that in time to come, that book of business effectively gets transferred to another company, or it may be simply they have the funds returned. I don't know which it will be.
Okay, and so in 5 years' time, if you're looking at the landscape, you're not thinking there'll be 5 or 6 of these new advisors will have taken out, these automated advisors will have taken a big market share?
Well, there may be automated advisors, but they're more likely to be large companies that basically set up, if you like, another brand or another operation within them, that they can then, a bit like, UBS are targeting smaller investors with their new offering. Of course, they got the UBS brand and the UBS kind of proposition behind it. It's quite hard for these robo competing in a way with the same kind of space, unless you're targeting a different audience, or unless you're doing something completely different, which most of them are not. Unless you have an amazing brand, an amazing performance and team running the investments, then it's going to be very hard for them to compete.
Thank you, Alan, for talking to financial advice in a digital world.
Thank you.